Tom Callahan had always been a quiet man. People who met him during their travels often said he had the calm eyes of someone who had seen many things but rarely spoke about them. He lived most of his life on open land, guiding cattle from one valley to the next, and fixing fences for ranch owners, who trusted him more than they trusted their own hands. Tom did not think of himself as a hero or a special person. He simply believed in doing the right thing, even when nobody else was watching. On a warm afternoon in the late 1800s, Tom was riding along a narrow trail between Tucson and the San Pedro River. The path twisted between tall rocks and long stretches of dry grass, a place where the world seemed so wide that a person could almost hear their own heartbeat. The sun was bright, but a soft wind carried the warm smell of sage and dust. Tom enjoyed days like this. He had his hat pulled low to block the sun, and his horse moved at a steady pace, relaxed and unhurried. It felt like a day when nothing unusual should happen. For a long time, the only sounds he heard were the hoofbeats of his horse and the soft rustle of grass brushing against the wind. Tom hummed a simple tune his mother used to sing. It was one he often turned to whenever he felt peaceful or thoughtful. He planned to reach a nearby ranch by evening, help repair a broken water pump, and sleep under the stars. That was all he expected from the day. But then something changed at first. It was only a faint sound, distant, unclear, almost easy to mistake for the cry of a bird. Tom gently pulled his horse to a stop and tilted his head. There it was again. It did not sound like a bird after all. It was a human sound, a shout of some kind, mixed with hurried movement. Tom frowned. This part of the land was usually very quiet. Travelers passed through sometimes, but rarely in groups, and the sound he heard did not carry the tone of ordinary conversation. Still, Tom did not react right away. He wanted to be careful. The frontier could surprise a person in many ways. Sometimes sounds carried strangely through the canyons, bouncing off the rocks and changing direction. He listened longer, letting his instincts guide him. His horse lifted its head too, ears turning toward the noise. Animals often sensed things before humans did. The sound came again clearer this time, but still distant. Tom felt his heart shift. Something about the voice in the distance did not feel calm. It felt troubled, hurried, and uncertain. His peaceful afternoon took a different shape. He reached down and placed a steadying hand on his horse's neck. "Easy now," he murmured softly. Tom had lived enough years to know that when a strange sound reached you on an empty trail, you had two choices. One was to keep riding and mind your own business. Many travelers did exactly that, believing it was safest not to get involved with anything unexpected. The other choice was to step closer, take a look, see if someone needed help. Tom had never been the kind of man to turn away without trying to understand what was happening. His father had taught him long ago that if you heard something wrong and kept going anyway, the sound would follow you far longer than the trouble ever would. Tom had remembered those words every day of his life, so he guided his horse toward the direction of the sound. The trail began to slope down into a shallow canyon. The walls on either side were shaped by years of wind and weather, smooth and reddish, like giant waves frozen in time. Tom moved slowly, pausing often to listen. The sound grew a little clearer, though still too far away for him to make out words. Whoever was making the noise seemed to be moving quickly, almost running. Tom felt the air shift. Something important was happening ahead as he continued down the path. Tom's mind wandered through several possibilities. Perhaps someone had fallen, or maybe they had lost their horse. Perhaps a traveler was calling for a friend who had gone missing on the trail. Many harmless explanations crossed his mind, and he hoped one of them was true. Tom never wished for trouble. A small cloud of dust rose from the far side of the canyon, barely visible at first. Tom leaned forward, watching closely. Dust usually meant movement, quick movement. The wind blew softly, carrying the dust toward him. His horse snorted, sensing the change. "Easy, boy." Tom whispered again. As he got closer, the trail opened into a wider space. From here, he could see farther across the dry land. The sound now was much clearer. It was not the cry of an animal or the laughter of travelers. It was a single voice, thin and breathless, as if someone were calling out without words. It wasn't a shout of anger, or even fear, more a sound of someone trying hard not to give up. Tom's stomach tightened slightly. Someone was out there, and they needed help. He nudged his horse forward again, still keeping a careful pace. The land stretched ahead like a giant open bowl, full of scrub bushes and scattered rocks. The dust cloud drifted to one side, slowly settling. Tom scanned the area, his eyes sharp and patient. Trained by years of quiet observation, then he saw movement. At first, it was only a small figure far in the distance, running across the uneven ground. The person stumbled once, then kept going. Even at that distance, Tom could tell they were exhausted. Something about the way they moved, shoulders low, steps unsure, head turning back every few seconds, told him they had been trying to escape from something or someone for a long time. Tom could not yet see who or what they were running from, but the picture was becoming clearer. He urged his horse forward again, slow but determined. His thoughts began to race quietly beneath his calm expression. He wondered what had led this person into such a state, and why they were alone in a place where lone travelers rarely wandered. As he drew nearer, he could see the runner a little better. It was a young woman, her hair long and dark, flowing behind her as she moved. Her clothes were dusty, and she looked very tired, almost ready to collapse. Tom felt a deep pull in his chest, a sense that this was no ordinary situation. Whoever she was, she needed someone to notice her. Someone to offer safety in a moment where she seemed to have none. But Tom also knew better than to rush in blindly. The land could hold surprises, and every situation had more than one side. So he slowed his horse and observed the girl's direction, the path she had taken, and the land behind her. He scanned for any sign of others' companions, helpers, or perhaps people she was trying to avoid. He saw no one yet, but he sensed she was not simply running for exercise or as part of ordinary travel. Her movements carried urgency, the kind that came when a person had been running for much longer than they could handle. Tom felt his concern deepen. He knew he could not turn away now. The sun hung high, casting long shadows across the rocks. The world seemed strangely still, as if waiting to see what Tom would do next. He took a slow breath, steady and thoughtful. The day, which had started so calmly, shifted into something uncertain, something that asked him to make a choice. And Tom Callahan was a man who did not ignore a call for help. Even when the call was silent, he straightened in his saddle, his expression calm but resolved. Whatever lay ahead, whatever story the young woman carried with her, Tom knew he was riding toward it with an open heart, ready to understand, ready to help if he could. He guided his horse down the last stretch of the trail, heading toward the girl who was fighting to stay on her feet. The warm wind brushed past him, carrying the dust of the land and the quiet promise that this day, this simple, ordinary day, was about to become something he would never forget. The young woman Tom had seen from a distance moved with the kind of tired determination that only came from long days of struggle. She was small, but there was strength in the way she kept going even when her steps faltered. Her long, dark hair clung to her back as she tried to keep her balance on the uneven ground. Every few moments, she glanced behind her, not in fear, but in caution, as if she was making sure she wasn't being followed anymore. Her name, though Tom did not know it yet, was Naylin. In her own language, the name meant something like soft wind in the morning, gentle and hopeful. She had lived her life on land that taught people to be brave, patient, and wise. Naylin had grown up near tall mountains where the sunrise painted the world in warm colors, and where families shared stories around small fires at night. Her people valued kindness, respect, and living in peace with the land. But the world had recently changed for her. She had been taken away from her home, separated from the people she trusted, and brought somewhere she did not understand. The people she had been taken with had been treated more like belongings than human beings. They were told to work, to follow orders, and to stay silent. The days were long, the nights were cold, and freedom felt like a dream that belonged to a different life. Still, Naylin had never lost her inner strength. Every morning she woke with the same quiet hope inside her chest, the hope that one day she would return to her family, or at least find a place where she could breathe without fear. She carried this hope like a small flame, hidden but steady. So when an opportunity appeared, when she saw a chance to slip away, unnoticed, she took it, trusting her spirit to guide her. She ran not out of fear, but out of the desire to be free again. She ran to reclaim something she believed no one should take from her right to choose her own path, but running was not easy. She had been traveling for hours by the time Tom spotted her. Moving across dry ground with the sun pressing down on her shoulders, her legs felt heavy, and her breaths came quickly. The land stretched far behind her. She did not know how much farther she could go. She did not know where she was heading, only that she could not stop. Every part of her body begged for rest, yet her spirit pushed her forward. She believed that somewhere ahead, someone kind might notice her. Someone might listen. Someone might help her find safety again. Nayland's thoughts drifted back to her family. She remembered her mother's gentle hands, brushing her hair on quiet evenings. She remembered her father showing her how to read tracks in the sand, teaching her which ones belonged to deer, which to rabbits, and which to people. She remembered her little brother laughing as he tried to imitate birds. These memories kept her moving, even when her legs felt like they could no longer carry her, but the land was wide. She had been taught to trust her instincts. So when she reached a small rise in the ground, she paused, breathing hard, and glanced behind her once more. She saw nothing, no dust, no distant figures. For the first time in many hours, she let herself stop. She sank to her knees beside a low bush, placing her hand on her chest as she tried to catch her breath. The earth felt warm under her palms, grounding her. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the quiet air touch her face. Her heart still raced, but she reminded herself that she was strong, that she had survived difficult things before. When she opened her eyes, something made her sit up straighter. A single figure on horseback appeared on the far side of the plain. Nayland's breath caught. For a moment, her heart beat wildly, unsure whether to fear or hope. She squinted through the bright sunlight. The rider was alone and did not move fast. His posture was calm, not tense or aggressive. His horse walked slowly, as if the rider did not wish to cause alarm. Still, Nayland had learned to be careful. She did not stand. She stayed low to the ground, observing, watching the stranger approach from a distance. The man's hat shielded his face, but she could see he kept his hands easy and relaxed. Nothing about his movements suggested danger. Tom, from his side, saw the young woman drop to her knees and knew she must have been exhausted. He slowed his horse even more, wanting her to feel safe. He did not raise his voice or call out because he did not want to startle her. Instead, he allowed the horse to step gently, giving her time to see him clearly. Nayland watched him for a long moment. She didn't know who he was or what he might want. But something about the way he approached felt different from the people she had been forced to obey. He moved with respect, not with the harshness she had grown used to. She waited until he was closer still, far enough away that she could leave if she needed to be, for she slowly stood. Her legs trembled from exhaustion, but she steadied herself with a deep breath. Tom lifted one hand slightly, palm open, a peaceful gesture that needed no translation. He kept his other hand resting gently on the reins. His horse snorted softly, as if trying to tell the girl they meant no harm. Nayland hesitated. She didn't know this man. Yet something inside her, a quiet voice she trusted, whispered that he might be different. She had learned to read people through their eyes, their tone, the energy they carried with them. And this man's energy felt calm, steady, and sincere. Tom stopped several steps away, giving her space. He could see she was tired, her clothing dusty, her face pale with fatigue. She looked like she had been traveling far too long without water or rest. His heart tightened with concern. "Are you all right?" he asked softly, keeping his voice gentle. Nayland did not understand his words, but she understood his tone. She stared at him, unsure how to respond. Tom realized she might not speak English, so he tried again, this time using simple gestures. He pointed to her, then spread his hands in a gentle question, asking if she needed help. She watched his hands carefully. His movements were slow, respectful. He didn't come closer. He didn't reach for her. He simply stood there, waiting for her to decide for herself whether she wanted him near. Something eased inside her chest. She lifted a hand and touched her throat lightly, a small sign that she was tired and thirsty. Tom immediately understood. He reached into his saddlebag, pulled out a water flask, and placed it gently on the ground between them. Then he stepped back, letting her see he expected nothing in return. Naylin hesitated only a moment before walking forward. She picked up the flask carefully, looked at him as if checking that she truly had permission, then drank. The cool water soothed her dry throat, giving her strength she had nearly lost. She closed her eyes as she drank, feeling relief wash through her body. Tom watched with quiet patience. He didn't pressure her. He didn't rush her. He simply stood still and let her recover. Knowing trust was something that could not be hurried, when Naylin finally lowered the flask. She looked at Tom with eyes softer than before. They did not share language, but in that moment, understood one another through something deeper, human kindness. She touched her chest, then lifted her hand toward him, a gentle gesture of gratitude. Tom nodded warmly. In that simple exchange, something important happened. For the first time in many days, Naylin felt she might not be alone. And for the first time in a long while, Tom felt that fate had brought him somewhere he needed to be. They stood in the quiet sunlight. Two strangers who had crossed paths at exactly the right moment. A moment that would change both their lives. Tom stood quietly beside his horse, watching the young woman who had finally begun to breathe normally after drinking the water he offered. The warm air settled between them like a soft blanket, and for a moment, everything felt calm. But Tom's calm nature was balanced with a strong sense of awareness. His instincts had kept him safe through many long journeys, and they told him something important. This girl had not simply been traveling. Her tired steps, her cautious eyes, and the way she kept glancing behind her all hinted at a difficult story. Tom wished he could ask her directly what she had been through, but he knew she would not understand his words. Still, he hoped that patience and kindness would help her feel safe enough to trust him. As Naylin stood, she touched her chest gently, then looked toward the horizon with a quiet expression. Tom understood she wanted to keep moving. The land behind her still held the weight of something she wished to escape. He nodded slowly, showing he would not stop her. But he also hoped she would allow him to walk beside her for her safety and for his peace of mind. She hesitated, studying him, reading the honesty in his eyes. Then she gave a small, almost unseen nod. That tiny gesture told Tom everything he needed to know. She was willing to trust him at least a little. They walked together at a slow pace, Tom leading his horse by the reins so Naylin would not feel pressured by the tall animal. The silence between them was gentle, not awkward. It felt like the kind of silence that grows when two strangers begin to feel a quiet connection, but it did not last long. A faint sound echoed across the plain voices, distant but approaching. Not harsh, not loud, but familiar to Naylin in a way that made her body stiffen. She froze mid-step. Her eyes widened, not with fear, but with the memory of people she wished to stay far away from. She did not move closer to Tom, nor did she run. She stood still, waiting, listening. Tom noticed her sudden change immediately. Her posture had shifted from calm to alert in the space of a heartbeat. He followed her gaze and listened. It took a moment, but then he too heard the soft murmur of voices, mixed with the sound of hooves moving at a casual pace. Tom's expression remained calm, but inside he felt something tighten. He did not know who these approaching people were, but Naylin's reaction told him enough. She did not want to meet them. He looked at her gently and made a soft gesture with his hand, letting her know she could stand behind him if she wished. Not because he wanted to hide her, but because he wanted her to feel she had a choice. She watched his face, searching for any sign of danger, and then slowly stepped a little closer to him, not hiding, but trusting. Moments later, 3 riders appeared from around a bend in the trail. They were dressed like travelers, dusty from the road and carrying packs on their horses. They looked like people who had been wandering for many days, tired but friendly. Tom let out a quiet breath. They didn't look like the type to cause trouble. Still, He remained cautious. The riders slowed when they saw Tom and Nellen standing together. The man in front, an older fellow with a sun-worn smile, raised a hand in greeting. "Well now," he called warmly. "Looks like we're not the only ones taking this path today." Tom nodded politely, but did not move closer. Nellen stood quietly behind him, her head lowered slightly. Tom could feel her tension. Even though she made no sound, the older rider glanced at Nellen with mild curiosity, not suspicion. "Is the young lady all right?" he asked kindly. "She looks mighty tired." Tom kept his voice calm. "She's been traveling a long way. I'm helping her get to a safe place." The older man nodded with understanding. "The land's rough these days. Folks have been moving around, looking for work or better places to settle. I'm glad she found someone willing to lend a hand." His gentle tone made it clear he meant no harm. One of the other riders, a woman with soft eyes, smiled warmly at Nellen and waved. Nellen watched her for a moment, unsure, but then gave a small, polite nod. "Anything strange out there?" The older man asked casually. "We haven't seen much besides dust and sky." Tom shook his head. "Just a quiet day." The riders chatted a little longer, speaking about the weather, the long road, and a town they hoped to reach by evening. Tom answered politely, but kept his focus on Nellen, making sure she stayed comfortable. The strangers never showed any sign of ill intent. In time, the travelers wished them a safe journey and rode on, slowly disappearing into the shimmering heat of the afternoon. Only when the riders were out of sight did Nellen finally released the breath she had been holding. Her shoulders softened. Tom watched her carefully. "You're all right," he said in a low, comforting voice, even though he knew she couldn't understand the words. The tone alone carried reassurance. Nellen looked up at him with a grateful expression, as if she understood not the words, but the heart behind them. She touched her hand to her chest again, then pointed to him, showing her thankfulness. Tom tipped his hat slightly, acknowledging her silent message. For the next mile, they walked without speaking. But something had changed. Nellen now stayed closer to Tom, walking almost beside him instead of several careful steps away. She had seen the way he handled the strangers with calmness and respect, and that had strengthened the trust growing inside her. But as they traveled, Tom began to understand the quiet truth behind everything he had seen. Nellen had been treated unfairly. She had been in a place where she was not valued, not respected, and not free to choose her own path. She had escaped that life, and now she was caught between the past she wanted to leave behind and the future she had not yet reached. Tom didn't know how to ask her what she needed, so he let his actions speak for him. He kept his pace slow, gave her space when she needed it, and walked ahead whenever the trail narrowed. As if clearing the way for her, they reached a shady area beneath a cluster of tall rocks where the sun finally softened. Tom paused and motioned gently for her to rest. Nellen hesitated, then sat on a smooth stone, the shadows cooling her tired skin. Tom settled a short distance away, not too close, not too far, just enough to let her feel safe. A long silence stretched between them, but it didn't feel empty. It felt like the beginning of something, a connection formed not through words, but through small acts of care. Nellen watched Tom with quiet eyes. She could see he was thoughtful, patient, and respectful. He didn't try to demand anything from her. He didn't act as if she owed him thanks. He simply stayed nearby, like a gentle shield against the world. Without trying to control her journey, she touched the stone beneath her fingers and felt a calmness she hadn't known for many days. Tom glanced at her now and then, making sure she was all right. His expression, always soft and steady, after a long moment. Nellen lifted her hand and pointed to her heart, then traced a small circle in the air, a gesture her people used to express gratitude beyond simple thanks. Tom watched her hand move, then gave a slow nod. Touched by the sincerity of her gesture, even without knowing its exact meaning, the air grew quiet. The land around them seemed to settle. It was in that stillness that Tom made an unspoken decision. He didn't say it out loud, but he felt it deep inside. He would protect her journey not by fighting or resisting others, but by staying beside her, guiding her toward safety. And using his calm strength to make sure she had the chance to choose her own path again, not as a hero, not as a savior, but simply as a man who understood kindness and responsibility. A man choosing to be a shield made of patience, respect, and gentle courage. The afternoon sun drifted lower in the sky as Tom and Nayland continued their slow journey across the open land. The shadows of the tall rocks stretched across the ground like long, dark fingers reaching toward the horizon. Everything around them felt warm and quiet, but inside that quiet lived a sense of change, something unspoken, something meaningful. Nayland walked with a steadier step now. The water, the rest, and the calm company had brought some strength back into her tired body. She kept her eyes forward, studying the land with the careful attention of someone who had learned to read the earth long before she learned to speak. She moved gently, almost silently, as if she belonged to the wind. Tom walked beside her. Even though they did not share language, he felt they had begun to understand each other. Every small gesture, every exchanged glance, every moment they quietly accepted each other's presence added to the trust growing between them. Still, the land ahead was wide, and their path was uncertain. Tom did not know exactly where Nayland hoped to go, but he sensed she was searching for true safety, something she had not felt in a long time as they walked. The world around them changed shape. The canyon walls softened and opened into a broad stretch of grassy ground with gentle slopes and scattered stones. A bird circled above them, drifting gracefully on the breeze. Nayland watched it for a moment, and a soft expression passed over her face. Tom noticed. Something about watching the bird seemed to remind her of home, or perhaps of freedom. He wished he could ask her about it. After some time, Tom decided they should stop at a small rise where a handful of trees provided shade. He signaled gently with his hand, and Nayland nodded in agreement. They settled beneath the trees, where the ground was cool and soft. Tom let his horse graze nearby while he and Nayland rested on the low grass. For a while, neither of them spoke. The wind carried the soft whisper of leaves. The world felt peaceful, almost like a moment suspended in time. Finally, Tom took out a small wooden cup from his saddlebag and filled it with more water from his flask. He placed it between them. Nayland took a sip, then looked at the cup thoughtfully. After a moment, she pointed to her heart, then toward Tom, showing her gratitude in her quiet way. Tom smiled gently. He still did not know all of her story, but he could see that she was brave and strong. She had walked through an experience that had tested her spirit deeply. The tiredness in her eyes, the softness in her steps, and the way she considered every sound around them, Emmett all told him that. She had overcome difficulties that would challenge anyone, yet she still walked forward. That touched Tom more than words ever could. After their rest, Tom stood and gently patted his horse. Nayland rose as well, ready to continue. She lifted her face to the wind, feeling its direction, then pointed toward a path that curved along a line of distant trees. Tom studied the landscape and saw that her choice made sense. The path she pointed to was safer and smoother than the one ahead. He nodded. They began walking in that direction. As they traveled, the sky slowly shifted from bright blue to soft shades of pink and gold. The coming evening wrapped the land in warm colors. The breeze cooled, brushing gently against their skin. The day had been long, but something about the changing light made everything feel more calm, more hopeful. Nayland walked with her hands lightly brushing the tops of grasses. She seemed more relaxed now, as if this new part of the land brought her comfort. Tom noticed she stepped more lightly, like someone who had walked here long ago, or someone who recognized something familiar even after a long absence. They reached another slope where the view opened wide. Below them was a peaceful valley with scattered bushes, soft hills, and a glimmer of water from a small stream. It wasn't large, but it promised clean drinking water and a safe place to rest for the night. Tom smiled softly. "Looks like a good place to stop," he said, knowing she probably couldn't understand, but saying it anyway. Nayland looked at the valley, her eyes reflecting the soft colors of evening. She nodded gently, then began walking down the slope with slow, careful steps. When they reached the stream, Tom let his horse drink first, then filled his cup again. Nayland knelt beside the water and touched it lightly, as if it were something precious. The coolness of the stream brought a peaceful look to her face. She cupped her hands and let the water flow over her fingers before she drank. The area felt safe, quiet, open, and welcoming. Tom built a small resting area, using his blanket and the soft grass nearby. He didn't light a fire. The night was warm enough, and he knew Nayland was more comfortable without. Too much attention drawn to their campsite, they sat side by side beneath a sky slowly filling with stars. Crickets began to sing, and the smell of the earth softened into the gentle scent of nighttime. Nayland lifted her head and looked at the sky with wide eyes. She whispered something in her own language, her voice tender and filled with a kind of longing. Tom didn't understand the words, but he understood the emotion behind them. She was thinking of her people, her home, the open skies she used to sleep beneath. Tom rested his hands on his knees, staring at the stars as well. He wondered what path lay ahead of them. He wondered how far her home might be, or whether she even knew where to find it again. He did not want to make decisions for her, but he wanted to help her reach a place where she could choose freely. The stars grew brighter, painting the dark sky with silver light. Tom felt a deep calm settle inside him. He wasn't usually a man who needed others around, but something about Nayland's quiet strength made him feel that he had been meant to meet her on that lonely trail. At one point, Nayland looked at him, her eyes thoughtful. She touched her chest, then lifted her hand toward him, a gesture she had used before to show thanks. But this time, she added something new. She placed her palm flat over her heart and then extended her hand outward, like she was offering something invisible yet meaningful. Tom didn't fully understand, but he felt the message. It was trust. It was hope. It was a simple, powerful statement. I am not alone anymore. Tom nodded and gently placed his hand over his chest in return, copying her motion. Nayland's face softened, and a small smile, calm and sincere, touched her lips for the first time. As the night grew darker, the two of them settled down beneath the quiet sky. Tom leaned back against a smooth stone, keeping watch over the valley with steady eyes. Nayland rested nearby, curled gently in her blanket, her face softened with peace she had not felt for many nights. The stream whispered softly. The wind carried the gentle sound of leaves. Stars shone like small lamps, guiding travelers through life. In that peaceful space, Tom made another quiet decision. One he didn't speak aloud. He would stay with Nayland until she reached a place where her heart felt safe again. Not as a leader, not as a protector, demanding gratitude, but simply as someone who cared. The night wrapped them gently in silence, carrying them into a new moment, one that promised hope, kindness, and the beginning of a shared journey built on trust and understanding. What lay ahead, neither of them knew. But for the first time, they were not walking alone. When the first soft light of morning touched the valley, the world seemed to wake up with a gentle sigh. The air felt fresh and cool, carrying the quiet promise of a peaceful day. Tom opened his eyes slowly, listening to the soft murmur of the stream nearby. The sky above him was painted with pale colors, soft pink, light gold, and hints of blue stretching across the horizon. For a moment, Tom simply breathed in the calm morning air. He felt rested in a way he had not felt in a long time. Something about the quiet night, the shared silence, and the presence of another human soul near him had filled the empty spaces inside his heart. He glanced to the side and saw Nayland still resting peacefully under her blanket. Her face looked calm, almost glowing in the early sunlight. The tension she had carried when he first saw her, tightness in her shoulders, caution in her steps, worry in her eyes, seemed much lighter now. Overnight, she had found a small piece of comfort. Tom smiled gently. It felt good to see her at peace. He didn't want to wake her, so he quietly stood and walked to the stream to splash cool water on his face. His horse lifted its head and gave a soft whinny as if greeting him. Tom patted the animal's neck and whispered a calm good morning. By the time he returned to their resting spot, Nayland had begun to stir. She sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes with the back of her hand, like a tired child. When she noticed Tom watching, she gave him a shy, warm nod. "Good morning, Tom," said softly. Even though he knew she wouldn't understand the words, still the tone carried kindness. And she responded with a small smile, after sharing some simple food. Dry bread for Tom and fresh berries, Nayland had gathered near the stream they prepared to continue their journey. But this morning felt different from the others. They were no longer simply walking away from danger. They were walking toward something new. The air was filled with gentle hope as they traveled. Tom noticed Nayland walking with more confidence. She no longer looked over her shoulder. Instead, she kept her eyes forward, her steps strong and sure. She seemed to know exactly where she wanted to go. Tom followed beside her without question. At one point, she stopped and placed her hand softly on the trunk of a tree, as if greeting an old friend. Then she closed her eyes, listening to the rustle of leaves. It was clear this land meant something to her. Tom respected her silence. He knew that some parts of the heart spoke without words. They continued walking until they reached higher ground. From the top of a small hill, the land opened into a beautiful field full of tall grass that swayed gently like waves in a quiet sea. Far in the distance stood a group of small huts made of wood and clay, smoke curling peacefully from a fire. People moved slowly between the huts, some carrying baskets, others tending to small gardens. Nayland stopped short when she saw the group. Her breath caught quietly. Her eyes widened, not with fear but with recognition. Her entire face softened, filled with disbelief, relief. An emotion she had been carrying deep inside for many days. Tom watched her closely. He saw the way her hands trembled gently, the way her eyes filled with light. Something important was happening. Nayland stepped forward slowly, her heart beating fast. Tom followed behind her, giving her space to move at her own pace. As they approached the area, a child playing near a hut noticed Nayland and froze. His eyes grew round and he ran toward the adults. Calling out excitedly, more people gathered, their faces turning toward the hill where Nayland stood. For a moment, time seemed to pause. Then a woman cried out, not in fear but in joy. The sound carried across the field, reaching every ear and stirring every heart. Several people rushed forward with open arms, calling Nayland's name in warm, emotional voices. Nayland took a shaky step forward, then another. Tears filled her eyes as she recognized the familiar faces, people she had thought she might never see again. A man with gentle eyes, a woman with hair like hers, children with bright smiles, they all ran toward her. When Nayland reached them, she was surrounded in a circle of warm, loving arms. Her people welcomed her with soft hands, touching her shoulders, her hair. Her face quiet touches filled with affection and relief. She closed her eyes. Letting the warmth cover her like a blanket she had missed for too long, Tom stood a little distance away, giving them privacy. He felt his chest tighten, not with sadness, but with deep happiness. He had hoped from the beginning that she would find her way back to the people who loved her, and now, seeing the joy on her face, he knew the journey had been worth every step. After a few moments, Nayland turned toward Tom and gently stepped out of the circle of her family. She walked toward him with calm eyes and a kind smile. Her people watched curiously. Sensing something important, Nayland stopped in front of Tom and placed her hand over her heart. Then, slowly and gracefully, she extended her arm toward him, offering him a gesture that spoke louder than any words. It was a gesture of deep gratitude, a gesture of respect, a gesture of honor. Tom felt something move inside him. His eyes softened. He placed his hand over his heart and bowed his head slightly, a small gesture, but one filled with humble sincerity. Nayland smiled, and her eyes glimmered with warmth. Her people approached Tom then, not with caution, but with gratitude. The older man placed a gentle hand on Tom's shoulder and nodded deeply, even without words. Tom understood. They were thanking him for bringing Nayland home safely. One of the women offered him a woven blanket, beautifully decorated with patterns that told stories. Tom accepted it respectfully, touched by their kindness. He stayed with them for a short while. They offered him food and water. Children gathered around him, curious about the quiet man with gentle eyes. Tom felt at peace, surrounded by the warm energy of a community that cared for one another. But Tom had always been a traveler. His life was on the open land, under the wide sky. He knew he could not stay forever, no matter how welcome he felt. As the sun began to lower again, Tom stood and prepared to leave. Naylin walked with him a short distance, her face shining with gratitude. She lifted her hand and placed her palm over her heart one last time. Tom mirrored the gesture. There was no need for words. Their hearts understood each other perfectly. Tom climbed onto his horse and looked back at Naylin. She stood tall and peaceful, surrounded by the soft evening light. She was safe now. She was home. With a gentle tug on the reins, Tom turned his horse toward the open road. The wind brushed his face as he rode away, carrying the quiet feeling that he had done something meaningful, something that would stay with him forever. Behind him, Naylin watched until he disappeared from sight. Her heart full of gratitude and calm. Their paths had crossed for a reason, and both of them knew it. Two souls from different worlds, meeting by chance. Brought together by kindness, and though they walked different roads now, the story of the cowboy who became a silent shield would live in the hearts of Nalan's people for years to come. Told not as a tale of danger or fighting, but as a story of compassion, courage, quiet strength. A story of choosing to help when help was needed most. A story of the gentle power of kindness.